Thanks for still being here. Amazing 2 days so far. As I said, I got a lot of stuff to do here, and when I got invited here and I saw the website, I'm like, this is awesome, because I'm the biggest film fan on this planet. I watch films with documentaries and with director's commentary, and then I'm like, Indiana Jones, yay! And then like they chose the most horrible one of the four. Because the characters are awful, like the screaming lady and the little kid. Like, let's put a kid in the movie to make it more appealing for children to watch that movie, and then the plot is about children being worked to death in a mine. Like, oh look, that could be you if you don't clean up your plate. Or I don't know why they put it that way, but it's just bizarre. And it's all about these magical stones, you know. And this doesn't work, so fuck it. It's about these magical stones that are so powerful that, like, when you put them together, they light up and they can kill people or they can heal people and help the village that they're in. And we talked about magic before, and we talked about how blowing your mind is possible when in the morning you heard about ducks wearing dog masks and stuff. But I'm better than that. I'm actually psychic. So I want you to now concentrate on the screen. I'm going to show you a character quickly. And I want you who recognizes this character immediately to shout its name. Okay? Ready? And now comes the mind psychic thing. All of you who immediately recognize that character and the name have an older brother or sister. Because you always had to play the second player, the horrible Mario. You know, like he was the first to play, and then when he died, then you could play it. Like, you get the green Mario because he sucks. And also, they're the Super Mario Brothers, so Mario's full name is Mario Mario. That doesn't make sense. But back to the topic. We've got Sankara Stones on the internet, and they're called HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are our magical stones. We put them together, and we do amazing things with that. They don't light up, but they do cool things with them. And we learned in the past from Jeffrey Heilmann how to use these things, how they magically go together, and what to do with them. And that's the holy trinity of web standards. Structure is HTML, semantic extras, behavior is JavaScript, and presentation is CSS, imagery, SVG, all these things out there. This was the idea. And then we started implementing them. And then we had the version for the WebDev Rockstar version, where it's like structure is the most important thing, semantic posh HTML, and put some, I don't know, microformats in there, because in 10 years some browser might be doing something with it, but we're still waiting. Or search engines might be indexing it instead of coming up with their own microformats. And behavior goes back to bleh, because JavaScript is hard to do. Or then we have the JavaScript version of like the single page app, where the HTML is a body element and the presentation is just annoying and the behavior is everything else, because we can control everything else when we do JavaScript. And then we got the modern version of it, which basically is this. Because with all the different preprocessor CMS libraries and frameworks, we bloated the internet so much that the average page is like 2 meg or something like that, because we solved so many problems that we didn't know we had. So this is nothing new. That's actually an old hat. Because we've done that before. We keep having to tell people that JavaScript is super mighty and super powerful, but you should not overuse it. And JavaScript can look bloated, and I'm living proof of that. And it also shows that you can do something about it and make it better. This was just 2 years ago. It was scary. And I've done that in 2004 or 5, when I wrote the unobtrusive JavaScript self-training course. I had 3 people here come up to me, and I'm like, yes, I'm amongst old people. This is awesome. You remember the stuff that I did in the past? And I also dared to disagree with Heilmann in 2005, when I wrote that there's actually 5 layers, because the content and the business logic plays as much in there as everything else. That's why I never liked CSS Zen Garden. Blasphemy. But you never got that perfect HTML. You always had a content management system that put crap in there, or .NET that thought IDs can have @ signs in them and things like that. You always had to deal with something that messes with your markup as well. That's why the content and the business logic I thought was far too important to keep out of the equation. And I find that this was part of the problem, why we, after like 15, 20 years, still have to go on stage and convince ourselves that websites don't have to look the same in every browser. This should not be an issue any longer, but we still have to remember that. And it's this back and forth between engineers and web developers about these three stones that is exactly in the movie as well. Because this is what it looks like in the movie. So here's like the full stack backend developer, and he goes on like, well, yeah, JavaScript can do everything. I don't need HTML and CSS. And no, markup is the best thing. There's so much beauty in URLs and in semantic updates. You should use that. No, I can do everything with JavaScript because then it's proper object-oriented and it can scale to infinity. So let's get rid of CSS and let's get rid of, no, my markup. I want to have my markup. I can generate markup. Don't worry about it. So let's get rid of markup and CSS and do everything in JavaScript. So yeah, don't ruin it too early. It goes on. So, and then it's like, yeah, okay, well, JavaScript is okay, it's fine, but what if it's turned off? Well, if it's turned off and doesn't work really, then you fall down the side of a thing in a very bad green screen, not really interesting thing, and you get eaten by crocodiles. So, single-page applications without fallback, you get eaten by crocodiles. Just remember that. Next job interview, go for that. It's an endless struggle between the two of us, and it should not be, and it drives me crazy. So what's the antidote? How can we stop arguing about this every year? I mean, you go on Stack Overflow and you have Java developers that say table layouts are easier. And people don't disagree with them, but just like, yeah, let them go. What's the antidote? What can we do to make things better? Well, let's deal with annoyances that we have. We have a lot of annoyances on the web, and I had a lot of annoyances in the movie as well. So what do we have there? First one is, it's sexy right now to do training on web development. Like everybody says everybody has to learn how to code and everybody has to use the web. And then you get tweets like that where it says like, learn HTML from A to Z index. And I'm like, okay, this is a starter course. Starting with web components is quite brutal. And what kind of namespace is that? I don't get it. But fair enough, maybe kids are cleverer. It's always the browser's fault. The browsers are always wrong, and they're just like, oh my god, if we only had good browsers, everything would be fine. And yeah, you see, this is a graph, so it's scientifically proven that the murder rate has gone down since people didn't use Internet Explorer that much. It's a graph, it's truth. Then people talk about a W3C, and it's like, oh, it's so academic, and everything is so long to read, and that's not true. I mean, this is an overview of the state of the mobile app development by the W3C, and this is a nice, engaging, short read if you have some time, and you are not too amazed about underlined blue links, and you want to be depressed seeing the support in different browsers that are not happening there. So the W3C is always like, oh, this is the source of truth, but it feels don't you have like a presentation for me or something? Or they do, but it feels a bit old school. That's why we do this differently. And then 2 years later, we do the same thing that they did before as well, because it has to be done this way, to a degree. And then we got the fanboyism, and I can do that. Like, I can do that in this technology. Everything that I release, somebody will tweet me back, I've wrapped this in a SAS component or whatever, and I've done this myself as well. This is somebody doing a Mandelbrot fractal in SAS. It takes 6.5 minutes to compile, and it generates like thousands of spans with all of them a class on them, but it's not an ID because then it's reusable, right? Why do you build this stuff? Because we can, and we love it. So Jeremy talked about the fault-tolerant web, and that's the really cool thing, and the escalator thing. I've written through blog posts about this in terms of accessibility as well, and that's cool. And actually, it's quite fun that you have to remind people about this as well. So let's take a look at image. Image is amazing. Source, meh, JPEG, cute kitten photo. If the image can't be loaded, it shows the text, cute kitten photo. So the alternative text is super important. Anybody who uses the word alt tag, just slap them, because there is no alt tag. It's an attribute. And it's a fallback. So when the image can't be loaded, cool. But as a developer, I want something more. I want to know that the image has not been loaded, because otherwise browser's too magic for me, and I don't like magic, although I'm a Red Hat, but it just doesn't do it for me. So we got the, you can do this like this. You get the query selector image, add an event listener of error on it. If the natural width and natural height is 0, then this image was not loaded and the error handler was called and you realize something went wrong with the image. So you got full insight into that. And that's amazing. That's really cool. I can do a really nice interface with that and fall back to something that doesn't look just like a broken image with a text in it. Now, if I go to video, this is interesting. This is now a video with MP4, which could be encrypted, all kind of stuff in there that Hollywood loves. And as a fallback, which is just linking to the MP4 with an image in it and an alternative text, and then a text under it, click image to play a video demo of dynamic app search. This is accessible, this is useful, this is really cool for people like Facebook as well that index the image inside the video as the preview of the blog post or wherever you put that in. It really works, except when it doesn't. This only means that browsers that don't understand the video element will show that back content. Now, if I got a browser like Firefox that couldn't play MP4 because it's not free, and we would have basically pirated a movie for you if you played it in an open source browser, it would never show that back thing. It would just show me a gray box because it's about the codec being installed on the operating system, not what the browser can do. So how do you do that progressively? What do you need to do? You go to the W3C, you read through the specifications, you cry a bit, you go out for a run and calm down and come back and read the specification a bit more, and then you find out that I thought it was an error handler on the video. Never happens. No error handler being fired, nothing. According to the specification, you put an error handler on the first source element inside the video, and when the error handler gets fired there. So that's what I'm doing here. I go through all the source elements inside the other one, and then add an error handler to the last one, no, the last source element, not the first one, the last one, and when that happens, then I take the inner HTML of the video and replace the video with the inner HTML. And this is the kind of stuff that I go to Android developers and iOS developers, and they look at me like, and you enjoy this? And I go, yes, I love these kind of things, but there's all this cool new technology coming every week that you have to wait for years for. You know, every week there's something cool new in browsers that I can look at, and I want this right now. And getting it and implementing it is a bit like that most of the time. Like, Flexbox, that's awesome. Let's try that Flexbox thing. Like, let's go further and to the other syntax as well, and now we got Flexbox, and it's fine, and it's great, and I want to use it. Oh, shit. But then again, 17, 18 years of my career, it's always been this way. Welcome to the web. We have to find ways to use things before the mainstream has them. And that's why we have preview browsers. That's why we have like flags. That's why you have all these cool things that us developers know and people don't know. And I think that's the thing that keeps me excited about it as well. Improvise, adapt, overcome. When there is a problem, find a solution for it, and then you be happy. And I'm always happy as this singing hedgehog when I see some new technology and it's broken, but I know where to file bugs and pester people about it and get this thing done. That's a great quote by somebody in Spotify about when they were, it was some Stack Overflow thing, when once again somebody said JavaScript is broken and we should have real programming languages in the browser like Python or whatever they wanted to put in there. And this quote is wonderful. Hating JavaScript is like hating the internet. The internet is a cobweb of different technologies coupled together with duct tape, string, and chewing gum. It's not elegantly designed in any way because it's more of a growing organism than it's a machine constructed with intent. That's totally true. We never know what our end users have. We have no control over the environment. We work in the blind environment while we have a moon dancing bear behind us or something. It's just wonderful that it's this organism that changes every year and keeps me excited and challenges me. So one thing we should do is stop to force our own beliefs down other people's throats, much like they did with Indy in the movie. Because we come up with these good quotes that I use in other talks, and I totally believe it as well, that Paul Backhaus came up with. If you build a web app today, it will run in browsers to 10 years from now. Good luck trying the same with your favorite mobile OS, excluding Firefox OS. We didn't pay him for that, but he said that. And it's totally true, because if you look at the Microsoft web page that has been reinvented the other day and rebuilt, this thing still works in the browser right now. Now, if I go out to the mobile space where I'm going right now, I realize that people just don't care about that kind of messaging. they just go and like, fair enough, that works in 10 years. Apps have to be out of the door in like 2 days, and if in 1 month's time you don't have any users anymore, that's what you expect in apps. Games are played for 1 or 2 months. You have to get as many of them out there and make as much money as possible. And we try to get these people convinced that the web is better because there's a longevity of 10, 20 years. No, they have to be faster. They have to be more nimble. So I don't think we have to agree with everybody and make everybody believe the same things that we do. And this is a quote that I just wrote for myself that you can requote or something. If you enable people worldwide to get a good experience and solve a problem they have, I like it. The technology you use is not important. How much you lock them in is, and don't lock people in. And that is, to me, the main thing. We suffer on the web because people build websites only for Internet Explorer 6, because it was the coolest, best browser back then. We do the same thing with WebKit prefixes right now. We do the same thing with testing for a certain screen size. I don't care if you use Android, iOS, whatever you want to use, Windows. If the thing does something good for people worldwide, awesome. Do it. Use whatever technology you want. You don't have to do everything on the web. Of course, it's cool, but you don't have to. I think we should worry about our own behavior a bit more as well, because we're always like, oh, it's the outside things that make us stop from using the web the right way. So our browsers are not good enough. People don't like the web. And this was quite fun. Like the web component talk earlier done a really, really good job. And I found this wonderful list of the state of the componentized web. And this one shows you all the different ways how you can make web components work right now. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes code examples, and it's library after library, framework after framework that make web components work right now until browsers support them, all of them with different syntax, making you actually dependent on that framework rather than thinking about web components whatsoever. And this we do over and over again. And how much beauty is there instead in a robustness of static HTML? Unless you look at the website like this that lists all the static site generators, and there's also 256 of them. The amount of effort that people make to create static HTML pages cracks me up. Like, you're like, okay, how do you do static HTML pages? Write an HTML page. One way of doing it. I could use OB flush in PHP. I've done that for years. Maybe have a cache server in between. These kind of things. Oh, no, you do it with Ruby and Node.js and these kind of things. And it seems like the most complex thing is to make a static HTML page. It isn't. But we love to optimize prematurely. As developers, we're wired this way. So let me tell you a story about this. When I go travel, I normally get these early flights, which is super annoying because in London, getting to the airport really early is hard to do. Get the first tube or something. So basically, I make sure everything in my flat is done by the time I go to bed. So I pack my suitcase, I pack my backpack, I take my laptop with me because I watch movies before I go to bed, of course. And then in the morning, I just take my laptop, put it in, take my charger, put it in the backpack, shower, put on clothes if I don't forget it, and go outside and basically go to the airport. I also clean up my whole place. I wash my dishes, I take my clothing, I fold it up, and so when I come back, I don't like, oh my God, now I need to clean everything up. So I had a flight, I had to be out of the house by 4:30 in the morning or something like that. So I put all the rubbish together in the box, like several ones with glass and plastic and everything. And my rubbish bin is in the basement of my house. So I gotta go like 5 floors down, and I have to have a key to open the rubbish bin, and I have to go through a door where I always forget the number. So I go out in the first floor and walk down the rest because it's basically a pain to get to my rubbish bin. So I try to avoid going to the rubbish bin as often as possible. So I want to do it once. So I packed everything together, I had my bags, and I'm like, I'm ready for the rubbish bin. And then I found these 3 bananas lying there. I'm like, great, breakfast. I have bananas for breakfast, that's cool. But bananas have peels. And then I caught myself for about a minute thinking the most effective thing would be to pre-peel the bananas and put them in the rubbish and take the rubbish down and eat the bananas next morning after having peeled bananas in my kitchen without like freezing them. And I'm like, okay, this is so developer thinking. You know, we're thinking about the way much more than we think about the outcome. So think about pre-peeled bananas next time when you try to optimize something before it comes out. And there's a good blog post about it called On Generalization, where he said like, he spent his whole life generalizing code, making code and then making it solve every problem that might occur. And all of these problems never occurred. The code is super complex because it thinks of scenarios, because he said generalizing code means you try to predict the future. And it's true, and we suck at predicting the future. Like, instead of writing clean code that is extensible, and when a problem occurs, you can make another extension to that to fix that problem, we try to fix every problem in one go. jQuery fixed old browsers, the DOM, and CSS animations at the same time. That's why it's really, really slow on mobile devices now compared to using the real technologies, because you couldn't optimize it. So think about, before you generalize everything, if you really need to, and just write some code from time to time and have fun with it. I think we should also be smug about what we have. We always forget just how far browsers have come, how many cool things we can do with them. And when I'm annoyed with something, when I'm really meetings and people annoy me, I go and code. You know, I could scream and shout and stuff, or I go to the gym and then I code. I just basically coding frees my head, and I'm like just doing something for myself. And then I blog about it and people like it, and I'm like, awesome, doesn't want to know why, but fair enough. So one of the things I did the other day for myself is make thumbnails.com. And I can show that quickly, what that does. It's basically this one here. And if everything works out right, yay. So it's a thumbnail generator in the browser. So I can basically drag and drop some images into this field, and it generates a zip file of these thumbnails that I then have on my hard drive, and I can now look at this at the thumbnails here as well. I can also do a preview, which of course now my second window has gone for some reason. Let's get the window back. Animals. Okay. Whatever, you're down here. Are you? Is this you? Yes, it's you. I can also do a preview here. So when I click the preview on, then I see all the thumbnails. And I can also do the settings of the thumbnail. So I can say I want the thumbnail 100 pixels by 100 pixels rather than 200 by 200. And I want it not centered on a background color, but I just want to have it directly as the size of it. I can change the quality of it as well to be something that's much, much smaller, and so on and so forth. And all I have to do is drag thumbnails in there and create thumbnails. And this is client-side in the browser, offline, without any plugin and anything else. This is rock and roll. This is amazing. I mean, a few years ago, you're like, what, you create a zip in JavaScript? What's wrong with you? But you can do this kind of stuff, and I would love to see this in every operating system and every content management system out there. And I'm not an amazing coder. I'm thorough in my approach. I'll take a look at how FileReader worked. I took a look at how Canvas actually takes pixels rather than just images and painting things. I have access to every single pixel in an image with Canvas, and that's how I do the resizing and the coloring and all these things. So play with this kind of stuff. And this also has it has a media query in there as well. So if I go back to this one and I would just resize the browser completely, if I can do this in this screen now, awesome. No, that's the wrong one, of course. That's another wrong one. Many wrong ones. Awesome. If I resize this, not shift it, resize it. Okay, fair enough. If I resize it to a smaller size, I get rid of all the other stuff except for, it doesn't do it right now. Awesome. Okay, something doesn't work, but that's okay. Basically, it just becomes a blue box, and I can put that behind the others and just drag them in, and it becomes part of a tool for Finder rather than an HTML page that is in my browser. And that, to me, is rather cool. Obviously, you don't seem to be impressed, but fair enough. The other thing, of course, is going outside and reading the world around us. Sensors, vibration API, ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, notifications. I have all these cool APIs to read things from mobile devices, from desktops, from computers, accelerometer, all these cool things to play with. Just have fun with that. And we saw that actually in another talk earlier when we talked about the device light API. And this is the demo that I did back then with it. So battery API is one of them. But the cool thing about the device light API is that it works on MacBooks because it has a light sensor in the camera that's normally used for the backlit of the keyboard. So you can just do this JavaScript to get numbers between 0 and 20,000. So I can ask people to touch their camera to, for example, go to the next website and totally freak them out because the camera is not on. It's just a sensor that is in the same pinhole as the camera. But I can do really cool stuff with that. I could use this rather random numbers here as well to, for example, seed passwords or things like that. So play with this kind of information coming into the browser and available to you. I could put that together with a microphone and make like a second number coming in and fix things around. And it's just 4 lines of JavaScript, and it works. Because if it's not supported, then the browser says, meh, okay, I can't fire that event. So you're never going to know about it. Developer tools actually totally and utterly rock nowadays, and all of them do. The F12 ones from Microsoft, the Chrome ones, the Firefox OS ones, the Firefox ones. And you may not be aware of this, because I keep telling people about them, and they're like, oh, well, Firefox is so behind. Let me take you a few things that are quite amazing that we have in there right now. This is a superfluous animation, as I called it, because nobody needs it. And in the developer tools, I can now go, for example, and I don't like the end color of that one. I could just click the color, and I got a color picker. I don't need to know what these random numbers mean anymore. Of course, I can still read the numbers, and it means something to me. But people just can now do a color picker and change the color this way. I can even pick the color from a background, which in this resolution here doesn't work. But you can pick something from somewhere else. So it's really editing the code visually. And if you don't believe me, one big thing that I got my head around wrongly was transformations. Like, how do you go from one transform to another? So if you roll over any transformation now, you get these arrows that show you the original state and the transformed state. So you know why something doesn't line up with something else. Even better when you got an animation that is a Bezier curve, which is just a super weird mathematical thing, you can just click on that one now, and you get a Bezier curve animation. You can basically physically, like visually change this thing around, and you don't need to know what any of these numbers mean. You just tweak it until you like it, and then you press Command S and you save it back to your tool. And that's pretty awesome. I really like that, because I don't want to know the math behind the Bezier curve stuff. We have other things, like, for example, let's try if this one works again, if I turn on the inspector. You see in the CSS debugger here that I, for example, have media queries. So it lists the different media queries that I have on this device, and when I resize the browser accordingly and the other one kicks in, oh, now it works, great. Kicks in, the different ones are highlighted. So if I want to debug my application and know why something isn't there and wondered which of the media queries got in there, this is now built in there as well. We have this responsive mode where you can even resize it according to different sizes of different devices. And you can do that without having to resize the main picture anymore. And I think this is the kind of stuff I want more. I want people to show developer tools to new developers rather than telling them, oh, you need 5 abstractions before you start developing. Let people play with stuff. Let them fail. We learn by failing. We don't learn by getting everything done for us. And this is across browsers nowadays. We all learn from each other. We all share with each other. And it's pretty amazing what is in there. The web IDE is even more amazing. You can now, in Firefox, build a new HTML5 document application from scratch. There's an editor built in the browser that allows you to debug applications on a Firefox OS device, on a simulated Firefox device, or actually on your desktop itself. Let's see if that crashes my presentation, because we haven't done that yet. So if I go to Tools, and I go to Web Developer, and I go to the Web IDE, I can now actually select a runtime and fire off a new Firefox OS device that is physically on my computer rather than a real device. So this is what Firefox OS looks like. I can now play any of these games there, find these things out there, or I can actually pick from that and start debugging this application while it's running as well. I can debug the operating system itself. I can go, for example, go to the home screen and start debugging that one, and then I got the debugging tools in there, and if I don't like what the background color is, for example, on the home screen, or the size of the grid, it's all the same CSS editing that I would do normally in on my desktop with things that are on my desktop. If I want to start a new application, I just give it a folder, I just give it a name, I start it, I open it, and I get already an outline with the icons that I needed, a manifest file, a bit of JavaScript to help you with like full screening, and some CSS to do the layout for you. And I can now run this on the operating system, and it starts it newly. If I change this to like hello empty app, and I save it and I rerun it, then it changes it accordingly. And this is in the browser. So we needed this because Firefox OS is in the whole world and not just only in people with like MacBook Pros. We just said like, you should only need the browser to start developing HTML5 apps because it's the HTML5 apps. You shouldn't need an IDE, you shouldn't need anything else. That's why we put that in there. Of course, this is not rock and roll enough because that's Firefox or Firefox on Android. Okay, I mean, people have other things. So last week, we released something called the Firefox Tools Adapter that allows you to debug, and get this, debug Chrome and Android on Chrome, no, Chrome on Android apps, and apps on iOS as well. So basically, you can connect your Android device and you can debug HTML5 applications inside those operating systems that don't allow Firefox on them. Well, Android does, but iOS doesn't. But you can debug any hardware within the browser right now, and I think that's pretty incredible that we are in this space already. If you have ideas about this and you want to make it better, please get heard. Go to Filebugs for us, Filebugs for Chrome, Filebugs for Safari, talk to anybody in Apple, Filebugs for Microsoft. They're all available. There's great articles out there where to reach. We put two things together. There's the Firefox Developer Tools user voice. This is where you can just ask what should come next and get people to do it. And the same with the open web apps. If you don't think this device light is enough or orientation is enough, if you know a sensor that is in hardware, there is no HTML equivalent or JavaScript equivalent for it yet, please tell us about that and what your use case would be, and we can implement that. Chrome team and Mozilla team both look at this kind of in their channel and then work together to get this thing standardized as well, because there's no point if it only works in one browser. And I think it's time to embrace the world and understand what's going on there. This is the numbers of Android. I always like it when people are like, oh my god, I got to test in 5 different browsers, that's terrible. 18,796 distinct Android devices, 11,000 last year. So in 1 year, 7,000 more devices to think about. Of course, it's crazy to think about all of them, but the fragmentation or the choice that you have there is as big as it ever was. So for us as web developers, we always had that problem. It's not a problem, it's a choice of users. Of course, the problem is that operating systems don't upgrade and the browsers are hardwired in them, and we could whine about this, or we can complain about this, or we can wait and make something better out of it. We just looked at this. This is the amount of connected devices on the world. So the World Wide Web, oh wait, because it's the black parts everywhere, including in the middle of the USA. I don't think people have electricity, or I don't know what's going on there. But I would want this all to be red. Like, everybody should have connectivity everywhere, but it's still a game of like, can you afford a very expensive phone so you can have that open thing that is connected worldwide? Tim Berners-Lee said a good thing about this when he said like, in the past, when in America a movie came out and I wanted to see it in England, I had to go on an expensive flight to go to America, to go to the cinema and watch the movie. If now a movie comes out in America, I can go to a website and find a really cheap flight to fly to America and watch the movie in the cinema there, because it still takes ages to come out in England anyways. So we haven't embraced the World Wide Web thing. That's like when you go to websites and like, oh, you're now Italian. I change it for you and you don't understand anything anymore, but obviously your IP is Italian, so you're as well. But the problem was connectivity in devices. And we just solved that problem, or one of the problems there, by partnering with people in India to create these phones. 1 gigahertz phone, 128 meg of RAM for €25. Unlocked in the supermarket, buy the thing, go out. Like, put any SIM card in that you want to have. It's very low for the normal phones that we need right now, but good enough for some HTML5 stuff. Google just did the same thing with Android One 2 days ago, released the Android One in India as well, and that's always the latest version of Android, so we don't have the problem that we have cheap devices with outdated Chromes on them, because it's always getting the new one. And I embrace that. I love Google for doing that, and I think it's the great thing to do, because the next million users that we have to care about are not going to be on desktop, are not going to be on laptops. They're going to have a phone in their hand, and they're going to try to find the web on that phone. And our job is to make it more exciting than downloading 15 apps and spending money on Kim Kardashian app or something like that. And make apps that also are relevant to them. So, to finally to finish this, picking brains is easy these days. Finding people, sharing information, getting out there, getting your name known is incredibly easy because we all are like doing a dance and song every single day we go on Twitter. We're all available, we all answer things. Of course, don't pester us too much, but it's the thing. Like Sarah, for example, is one of the most inspiring people I've seen in the last year. And she came out of nowhere. Out of a sudden, I saw these code drops articles that she did, and I'm like, this is really well researched. And then I saw one of the research, holy shit, where does she find the time? And it's just incredible. And all of you could be somebody like that. All of you can write articles. People pay you to write articles. You can do it on your blog when nobody's reading it, or maybe a few people, or you can get paid for writing the things that you care about. How cool is that? Who else can do that? Not many people. So there's great talks out there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I tweet a lot, but you can filter it by searching for video. As I'm coaching people in public speaking, I always want to see good videos to people point to and say like, this is what the speaker has done right, do that as well, these kind of things. Alex Firecare, Offline First, is probably the best talk I've seen about the offline problem. And if your app doesn't work offline, you don't have an app. That's my point. Everybody will be offline sooner or later, and I am right now, but this is a really wonderful talk about this. My colleague Angelina Fabro gave a talk about the DevTools and the CSS problems on mobile, how to solve them with the DevTools of Chrome and of Firefox. So that's a great video to look through as well. And I would have killed for the tools we have now in the past. GitHub, a social environment for coders. That's quite a bizarre connection, but it works. You can just host your stuff there, and you just have a page immediately of your demos. JS Fiddle, JS Bin. And with Together.js, which is now also included in JS Fiddle, you even have a chat client. So these are two people together in JS Bin here, in JS Fiddle, coding together, and each of them has an arrow and has a cursor. And you can code in different parts of the document and have a chat at the same time. Whenever people ask me something that they're like, oh, my code is not working, can you help me out? I use this instead of just writing 10,000 tweets back and forth that we don't understand each other or fill up Stack Overflow with more strange things. This is an audio chat, which you don't hear right now because sound waves don't show. But it's the same thing. You got like everybody in the chat gets his own cursor, and you can have an audio chat at the same time. I use that for interviews as well. This is a great way to interview somebody because you see where they're trying to find bugs and where they're trying to fix them. And this technology is now in the browser with WebRTC. You don't need to buy anything for that. You just press a button on JS Fiddle, and you can start communicating with people out there. So in essence, I would say, this is in the Spotify office in Stockholm, and I love it. Think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. Do something, build something, anything. You don't need to have the perfect thing out there. You won't build the framework that everybody will use. This is like over. We don't need more frameworks. We need more things that do one thing and one thing well and show people that technologies that are open work. So if it doesn't work somewhere else, fine. Just explain that you did it for one environment only, and I will stop telling people off for doing only things for Chrome. I'm okay with that by now. Tweaking it is what the internet is about. Things are never finished. They change every month, every year, everything will be different. We did frame layouts, we did table layouts, we did CSS layouts, we use Flexbox. It changes every time, so you cannot build the perfect thing that will be till the end of time. And I think it's time to stop hesitating and to bring yourself out there. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm done here. I want you to be at this stage and other stages. I want you to be out there, write articles, get money for them. I want you to go back to your boss and impress them with what you learned here today and use that stuff. Not only be impressed by it and say like, oh, I wished I could use that. Just use it, because you're the people that find the problems in them that people like me in browser makers have to fix for you. It's time we have a real relationship between client and end user of a browser. Even if it's a free browser, that's no excuse. So please build cool stuff, enjoy the technologies that we have, and think about the best practices of the past and move them on instead of just trying to enforce them. And that's all I have. So thanks very much.